Hi everyone, welcome to Decoding the Unknown. This is Tiffany H. Lewis on Clear Source Radio and iHeartRadio. So I want to jump right into it this evening because we have a lot to discuss. We're going to be discussing Project MK Ultra, CIA mind control programs, the Illuminati, and we might even delve into Satanism depending on how much we can get into one conversation. I want to let you know up front that there is so much to discuss on this topic that this is going to be at least a 4-part series, and this will be the first episode of that 4-part series. And as I said last week, I just want to reiterate the fact that this program, Decoding the Unknown, every single Friday. It will be maybe every other Friday or maybe one Friday a month because it takes a long time to research these topics and look at it from a point of view that's analytic and not emotional and not attached in any way and be non-biased and not have an opinion. So right off the top, I want to let you guys know that. I also want to let you know that tonight's episode is going to maybe trigger some people. Like I said, it's going to go in multi directions, and I hope that it doesn't get too dark for you. But if it does, feel free to tune out. Next up on the agenda, please be sure to like and follow the page Decoding the Unknown on Facebook. It's facebook.com/the word encode and then the number 8. I don't know. I could be wrong. Just look up Decoding the Unknown on Facebook. No, I'm sorry. It's facebook.com/uncover and then the number 8. Uncover, UNCOVER, and then the number 8. Decoding the Unknown. Facebook.com/uncover, the number 8. All right, so let's get started. For those of you who don't know what MK Ultra is, it is a project that was formed in the 1950s by the CIA, and it is, in fact, a mind control program. So it is also the code name given to a program of experiments on human subjects that were designed and undertaken by the United States Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA, and which were at times illegal experiments. Their experiments on humans were intended to identify and develop drugs and procedures to be used in interrogations in order to weaken the individual and force confessions through mind control. So the project was organized through the Office of Scientific Intelligence of the CIA and coordinated with the U.S. Army Biological Warfare Laboratories. All right. The operation was officially sanctioned in 1953, was reduced in scope by 1964, further curtailed in 1967, and officially halted in 1973. The program engaged in many illegal activities, including the use of United States and Canadian citizens as its unwitting test subjects, which led to controversy regarding its legitimacy. So people and Americans and icons did not know that this program was being used on them. MK Ultra used numerous methods to manipulate people's mental states and alter brain functions, including administration of drugs, especially LSD or acid, and other chemicals, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, including, and it's very important that I state this, it includes a lot of sexual abuse on children. Those are a lot of their victims. And also other forms of torture, whereas they may use your greatest fears against you to scare you not to speak. So, the scope of Project MK Ultra was broad with research undertaken at 80 different institutions, including colleges, universities, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. The CIA operated through these institutions using front organizations, such as some of our most major retail stores like Mattress Firm and JCPenney, and like literally everyone is, even if it's unintentionally, involved in this, what would be not just a money laundering scheme, but a cloning scheme. Back to the facts. So they use front organizations, although sometimes top officials at these institutions were aware of the CIA's involvement. Project MKUltra was first brought to the public attention in 1975 by the Church Committee of the United States Congress and Gerald Ford's United States President's Commission on CIA Activities within the United States. Investigative efforts were hampered by the fact that CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all MKUltra files to be destroyed in 1973. The Church and the Rockefeller Commission investigations relied on the sworn testimony of direct participants and on the relatively small number of documents that had survived Helms's destruction order. All right, in 1977, a Freedom of Information Act request uncovered a cache of over 20,000 documents relating to MKUltra, which led to Senate hearings later that year. Some surviving information regarding MKUltra was declassified as recently as July 2001. Okay, so that's an actual definition. And I'm going to kind of go through this and touch on certain subjects of this actual definition of it. But here's what I know off the top of my head. So MKUltra was a program designed by the CIA through the use of LSD, hypnosis, other drugs, and other ways to use methods of mind control or witchcraft or trickery or to create an illusion. Okay? And everybody and anybody could have been a victim of this, and they never even knew. So as I further delve into my research of this topic, it led me to several other subtopics, such as Satanism, Saturn, the United States government, England, the Queen of England, that's right, royal families, the number 13 and what that represents in all of this, and the Illuminati, amongst other things. So I would say the general consensus on the Illuminati is that, and this is also why the number 13 is important. A long, long time ago, back around the Soviet War, right? France, there was a war, I think, that took place in France or to do with the French. And I'm sorry, this is kind of complicated to explain, but I'm doing my best here. Anyway, we won the war against France, or whomever won the war against France, because we were understaffed and didn't have enough men, and it was a surprise attack, which dates all the way back to Christopher Columbus, who coincidentally discovers that the earth is round and not flat, which is not true. But that aside, the number 13, there were the original 13 families, all of wealth, power, and money, who started this secret society, right? Like I said, dating all the way back as far as time can go. And this goes all the way back to the Egyptians and to hieroglyphics, and so far back that I don't know if you know this, but Babylon, which is mentioned in the Bible multiple times, is actually, I believe it's Israel today, in today's world. I think it's Israel. It may be Iraq, but anyway, that was Babylon. And so a lot of practices used back in the Babylonian times, such as hieroglyphics and Egyptians and tombs and reincarnation and what would turn out to be considered, witchery or witchcraft, such as the Salem witch trials, for example, right? So these 13 families were the first 13 families to create this secret society where only 1% of the world to this day is allowed into this secret society. And they've taken and put their clutches and claws around pop stars, specifically R&B or rock/pop stars, actors, actresses, and anybody who makes a certain amount of money. And the reason that I bring up money right now is because it all leads back to this bank in England, which is obviously where the Queen is. And so this bank, if one were to make enough money and they were to move their money into several banks or even just one bank or have an offshore account, whatever the situation may be, once one person makes a certain amount of money, this elite secret society, this top 1% of people, they know about that because it's all working together here. Okay, so they know when you make a certain amount of money, and then they come to you and they ask you to join their secret society. And if you refuse to join their secret society, or maybe even if you do, which has two separate scenarios. One of them is for an up-and-coming rising star, such as Miley Cyrus or any other Disney star, Demi Lovato, etc. Others are people like Eminem, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Taylor Swift, Nicki Minaj. I could go on all day about the number of people right this second who we all idolize and consider icons, that are all part of this Illuminati satanic ritual scheme. But I need you to know that it's not just satanic. It also dates back to Babylon and Egypt and the Egyptians and the hieroglyphics. And to prove that point, I'm going to go straight to the dollar bill in U.S. currency. There's a pyramid on it with the all-seeing eye inside of it. And you've seen rappers like Jay-Z or his wife Beyonce or others hold up the sign that forms a pyramid where your thumbs touch each other and your two index fingers touch each other, therefore forming a pyramid. And sometimes in the middle of that pyramid, they might hold it up above their head because there are 13 steps, and then above that is a floating pyramid with an eye in it, the all-seeing eye, right? And the eye stands for good and evil, left side of the brain and right side of the brain. And trying to keep this G-rated and trying to keep this sort of as simply put as possible. So, like I said, a Disney star, an up-and-coming rising star who is under the age of 18 may be introduced or invited, because you have to be invited to one of these meetings and to join the Illuminati, which you may or may not believe exists, but there's a good chance I'm going to convince you to believe that this evening. So at 17 years old, they contractually sign their life away and literally sell their soul to the devil for money, for monetary things, for material things, rich and famous and powerful and etc. The second group of people is people who are already high ranking, such as the Queen of England and the President of the United States and et cetera, senators and business owners, top corporations, and they're all working for the same cause. And the cause is that you convince the person to sell their soul to the devil, aka join the Illuminati, And then they begin performing rituals. And there are 3 rituals that have to take place before one is actually, during the initiation process, before one is actually considered in the Illuminati. I'm not going to tell you what the first 2 are because it's not appropriate right now, but I can tell you that they are nefarious and horrific, and you wouldn't want to hear about them anyways. But the third part of this is, at some point, people naturally rebel against forces of evil that are trying to take over them. So at some point, mind control has to come into play. So they kill the person, and then they make a clone of the person in one of these billions of cloning facilities all over the entire world. And they program a chip and implant the chip in the clone, which is a fake telepathy method from the real being, the real entity. For instance, the real Britney Spears, and then she'll have a mental breakdown, and then all of a sudden this clone will reappear, and she's bright and cheery and happy, and she's this mega super ridiculously famous pop star. Again, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Jay-Z, Eminem, etc. All right, this is what happens to all of them, dating all the way back to way before the Beatles, but we could start with the Beatles for the sake of this conversation. And the lead singer of the Beatles wasn't actually cloned. He actually really did die in a car accident, and they found a lookalike and performed all these surgeries on him and even altered his voice so that he sounded like him. And that's how the Beatles lived out their career. And then when the Christians found out about it, they all went on strike and started burning Beatles records and things like that, all the way down to John Lennon's death and so on and so forth. But since the Beatles, we could be talking about Elvis Presley. We could be talking about every major famous person that you've ever seen or liked or watched their movies or heard their videos or watched their videos. They have basically been cloned, and not once and not twice, but over and over and over and over again. Because for every clone that misbehaves or has a meltdown, sort of like when Britney Spears did and she shaved her head, or sort of like Amanda Bynes did when she got in trouble and went to court and wore this strange blonde wig, and everybody thinks that they're crazy, right? And that's the whole point of the Illuminati. It's you take them in, you sell your soul to the devil, and if you were to ever disobey, because sometimes your clone's programming can malfunction, which could cause you to A, have a glitch and just kind of stand there staring into the air, B, transform into you can manifest into reptilians or a reptilian form, or C, they use your body to summon demons for real, and they conjure them. And so by saying certain words to you, people are actually assigned to you to speak certain words to you to activate your, upcoming performance, or tell you to smile, or whatever it is that they are told to tell you to do. And those people are called handlers, and they usually wear white. So the pop stars and the actors and all the other famous people, you're going to prominently see 2 colors, white and black, evil and good, God and the devil, and this ongoing war between God and the devil, or evil and good. So they clone you, and for every clone of you, they have 5 more clones of you, so that if one were to be accidentally triggered by some trigger word from someone other than their handler, say on a Ellen DeGeneres show or something like that, and they just stand there staring into space, or maybe you notice that one eye is a little bit different than the other eye, or just something feels really off about that person, it is because they were killed and then cloned many, many times over. And so if one of their clones were to glitch, they always have 5 to 6 more, at least, in the background that they've cloned at these cloning centers to replace them at any given time. And then out comes these other personalities, such as Beyonce has openly admitted that she has an alter ego or another personality that she calls Sasha Fierce. Jay-Z calls himself Jehovah's, literally. And they all claim to worship the devil. Britney Spears, I'm not sure what she named her. No, let me see. I know she had an altar and she wore a pink wig, and her altar actually spoke with a British accent, right? And so what happens is somebody says a trigger word to you, to the clone, to the person, because the person has already died. Either they A, went to rehab, or B, got in a car accident, or C, got in an airplane accident, and just they died because they probably didn't want to cooperate, or they had already signed their soul over, but then they didn't want to anymore, free will, whatever. They wanted to rebel against the idea. They didn't want to do that anymore. So their handler has then the ability to say certain words to turn them on, turn them off. When they go on stage, and you can see it happening in the 2013 Super Bowl when Beyonce gets on stage in the middle of her performance. And I'm going to post pictures of this on our Facebook page, Decoding the Unknown. And you're going to watch her morph and transform as if something is literally coming from inside of her, and it's been conjured and called up, and you can watch it manifest going up through her throat and out into her, what is then become a serpent's tongue. And her eyes turn pitch black, and she's making these like really evil faces and these dark black marble eyes. This is all part of it. Some of the other things are symbols. So when you see famous singers or actors or whomever wearing animal stripes or colors like leopards or cheetahs or tigers or whatever the case may be, that is them owning the fact that they're a slave to their master, who is the Illuminati, who it really does go back to Satanism. But they always joke, all these famous celebrities always joke that, quote unquote, I sold my soul to the devil, or, we all worship the devil, etc., etc. We've all heard them say it. We've all seen them have emotional breakdowns and come back a completely different person. They look different. That's because they have been cloned. And so the actual person's body is sitting in a cloning facility somewhere in the world, right? And they're being fed all these drugs, which is what goes back to the MK Ultra mind control program, because that's how much it's being used today in the world. So they're being cloned and they're being fed all of these drugs to keep them, I guess alive, but not really alive. Or maybe they have been killed, but at the moment of death, whatever happens, all the information is transmitted from their brain onto a chip and then implanted into a clone. And then so on and so forth. It keeps repeating itself, this cycle. More clones are made and more clones are made out of that and more clones are made out of that. And proof of that argument is that when you see these famous musicians or actors in a mirror, right? You see them looking at each other, or in their video or in their show on the halftime show or their music video or whatever they're doing. Not only are they openly talking about their alter ego, who normally has a name, such as Beyonce's alter ego's name is Sasha Fierce. Eminem's got one. Nicki Minaj has one that she calls Roman. And they openly admit that they have all been possessed by demons, and that the demons get summoned and then they don't remember anything post the show. And that their alter ego is able to do things that they're not able to do in normal everyday life. Like, they're not even like that in everyday life, but all of a sudden this large secret society group has taken them into their hold and forced them by cloning them and inserting a chip into their brain to do exactly what they want them to do exactly at that moment. And then if anything were to go wrong, because technology is not perfect, right? Say there's a glitch, or sometimes they call it the twitch, when someone just, someone famous just stands there staring into space, and someone is blatantly talking to them, and they're just staring into space. Or maybe you'll see that one eye that looks a little bit different, kind of twitching, or kind of, one eye is blinking and then the other eye is blinking, just really weird things that are genuinely off about the person. Well, all that's true. All of that is MK mind control. All of that is the Illuminati. Nobody's afraid to talk about this subject. And I kind of lost where I was going with that point. I know I had said something about they wear or represent animal skins, such as cheetahs and tigers, big cats, because the ultimate female MK Ultra Illuminati slave is known as a sex kitten. So then therefore that's when they start representing these skins of animals and dressing like them and incorporating them into their videos, first off. Secondly, above them is the platinum kitten. And these are the Taylor Swifts of the world that have a lot of videos where they're biting on diamonds, and diamonds are everywhere. Even as far back as Marilyn Monroe, diamonds are a girl's best friend, diamonds this, diamonds everywhere, platinum. That's what that is. Third thing, every one of these famous musicians who I'm speaking about right now, every one of them has a video where they're in a bathtub. Eminem has one where he's in a bathtub full of blood. That's because the Illuminati and the satanic rituals that they're involved in are terrible, terrible things. And, death and murder and assassinations. And, but real quick, back to the mirror thing. The reason for the mirror is because when one stands in a mirror, and then there's mirrors behind that, and then there's mirrors to the right of that, and mirrors to the left of that, they're basically surrounded by a room full of mirrors that are all facing one direction. And then behind them is mirrors facing, the front of the mirrors. So they're all kind of facing each other. And when you see, for instance, a pop star with a video with a mirror, and she's looking in the mirror, or he is looking in the mirror, and you're seeing all these different versions of them where their head looks a little bit different this way, or their angle is a little bit different that way. And that is absolutely representative of the fact that they now have these multiple personalities / alter egos. I'm not going to get into how they become these alter egos, other than the fact that they are cloned and a chip is installed on the clone's head, and they're cloned many, many, many times over. They die many times. They sing about dying many times. If any of them were, like I said, to rebel, they would just bring them in, and they would say that they were crazy, or say that they went to rehab, or say that they got in a car or an airplane accident, kill them off, and then bring out another one of their clones, because there are a lot of clones waiting in line for their turn in the limelight. Seriously. So when you see, especially in a music video, since the Illuminati is specifically targeting the arts these days. So you got movies and TV and radio and all the other influence in which people watch and play every day, such as video games, right? Especially like Game of Thrones, for instance, which actually tells a story of ancient history of the Illuminati. And I can't go any further without mentioning the Freemasons here. I'm just going to mention that here, and I will come back to that. Okay, so in the video games that everyone's playing now, Game of Thrones, it actually tells you the story, which happens to be a true story, of one of the ways the Illuminati began and got started and what they're doing today. It dates back to Babylon. It tells one of the true stories of the ancient gods and Saturn and, everything that's got to do with that. But when you see a celebrity who's standing in front of these lots of mirrors, or even just one mirror, and she's looking right at it, or he is looking into the mirror, and it is shattered because maybe they threw something at it, but for whatever reason, they shattered the mirror. And there's always this picture of them on the television or on YouTube or on the internet of them looking into a mirror that is shattered into like a million pieces. And what that represents as an individual who has been taken in by the Illuminati or who has purposefully sold their soul to the devil to gain fame, it is the separation and the disassociation from themselves and these other personalities or alter egos. And now some of these famous musicians, such as Nicki Minaj, have 5 or 6 different personalities. And all of them have handlers, like I'm saying. So their handler's job is to trigger them. So before Beyonce went onto the stage on the Super Bowl that I'm speaking of in 2013, which you can easily Google this and you can literally watch her morph or transform into this reptilian alien form and then a demonic form, and then watch her change back. And then she goes off stage and she says, I don't remember anything, because Beyonce, I'm Beyonce, I'm shy, I'm not like that, I don't know where Sasha Fierce came from. It's a lot of information that I'm trying to give you guys in one episode. And like I said, this is going to take many, many episodes, but it's got a lot to do with it goes as far back as it's about manipulating people as a whole. It's about a one world order. It is about one government, unity, one religion, and supposedly a world where the 1% kills off every other person, every other thing, and every other person, and they rule the earth, and there's no limit of money or means or anything that they want, because they're not fighting with the other 99% of the world over anything. And these people sometimes, if not always, are genetically produced. For instance, DNA has 2 strands. And have you ever wondered why there's only 2 strands and why, why is there only 2 strands? Why is it so simple? And do some research on that, and we'll have a whole other conversation about that one day. But for today's session, I just want to talk about that, and I want to make you aware of the fact that this has a lot to do with Saturn. I'm going to touch on that for a second. So Saturn was the original sun. Now, this one, you're going to have to get creative with your mind to try to wrap your mind around this. So the sun as we know it today is not the same sun that they knew it back in the Egyptian, Babylonian times. Long, long time ago, BC. And the reason why you see so many hieroglyphics with the sun and the moon and the stars, and why astrology even exists and things like that, is because it has meaning. You'll see lots of like pharaohs riding on these chariots that are shaped kind of like a boat or whatever. So envision this. The sun as we know it today and the moon do not exist. Back in the day, way, way, way back then, the sun was actually Saturn, which is like 96 billion times the size of Earth, and the sun and the moon as we know it today, literally. Saturn's rings, it's got a lot of other suns and moons around Saturn. Its rings encompass the whole wide world at a rate of like literally 90 something billion times the size just of planet Earth, right? Okay, excuse me one second. Okay, so Saturn has these rings. Now Saturn also has 4 phases. When a solar or a lunar eclipse happens, the moon is said to come in front of the sun and block light. Well, back in the day, way, way, way back in the ancient Egyptian times, dating all the way back to what I guess is post dinosaur times or something, and we'll get back to the relevance of dinosaurs and reptilians and the relevance, but for right this second, okay, so Saturn has 4 points: up, down, left, right, north, east, south, west. So like with your eyes closed, close your eyes and make a circle with your hand, an opening. Okay, that's Saturn. Now make a circle underneath that with your other hand, and that's Earth. And back in the day, Saturn, on one of its 4 axes, whichever way the crescent decided, whichever way it orbited to, the crescent would cover a certain part of Saturn, exhuming light onto Earth, the Earth that we live in now. And anytime that crescent would move to one of the other 3 sides or any of the 4 sides, it shone down a different kind of light. So if it's at the south, at the bottom of Saturn, it brings forth this light into the universe that we live in right now, and it shines a certain way, maybe a certain color, maybe at a certain time of day, and then that crescent moves up. You know, it rotates around Saturn, and it makes a crescent that just goes from, you know, left to right and all the way around full circle and back again. And every one of those 4 points shines a different amount of light, a different way at different times. And that crescent on the bottom of Saturn, underneath of Saturn, or could be said, I guess it could be argued that it's a ring of Saturn, whatever. That crescent on the bottom of Saturn and the 4 points that I'm referring to, which are up, down, left, and right. Now you have to add 2 more because we have the moon and the sun, plus all the other orbits and all of the other rings and all of the other planets that just revolve around Saturn, which we could have a whole conversation on the direct correlation of Saturn to Satan. But for the sake of this conversation, I want you to imagine that back in the day, Greek gods, whoever, the hieroglyphics, things like that, Saturn was the sun that we humans know today to be the sun. It's not the same sun. It's not the sun that we see today. It's not like this big ball of fire or heat or energy. That is the sun that we have today. But Saturn was the sun first. So Saturn shone this light upon the Earth that we live in today and we encompass. And it had 4 distinctive different shades of light and times of dark and possibly eclipses and things like that. But the whole point of me pointing out that crescent at the bottom of Saturn is that that crescent symbol is used in just about literally every symbol, every icon, every picture, everything, right on down to the Coca-Cola can. That crescent shape is everywhere. And it's really hard to explain this, but the points in Saturn, the 4 points, when you add you're going to add 1 more. It's 5 points. That's where the pentagram comes in, or some might call that the Star of David. It again is on the dollar bill. Lots of them actually. But so is that crescent at the bottom of Saturn. You're going to have to do a little bit of research to keep up with what I'm saying here, but Saturn is known to have this crescent, lunar moon type crescent underneath of it that just encompasses the bottom part of it. And as it revolved around Saturn and it shone different forms of light onto Earth, that's what they knew as daylight and nighttime and months and years and days. And that's why so many hieroglyphics reflect a crescent shaped something, be it a hand that's a crescent shape, or a boat that's a crescent shape, or what you might consider to be weird symbols. It really all comes down to Saturn being the sun back then, in the Earth that we know it to be now, with the sun that we have now, which is not the same sun that it was back then, because back then the sun was Saturn. And now Saturn is way bigger than the Earth and the sun, and literally the ring around Saturn that encompasses Earth and the moon and the sun is like I said, it's like 96 billion times larger than the earth and the moon and the sun all in one circle. So Saturn, inside of that ring, which we can guesstimate is this ring around Saturn, let's say it's 96 million times bigger than the size of the earth, moon, and sun as we know it today, right? The world that we live in, plus our sun, plus our moon. Now add a ring around that. That's 96 billion times larger than all three of those elements combined. And imagine that it had a frequency from a higher level, a higher knowledge level, an intelligent force. Imagine that we were all living in a pre-staged, computer-controlled, matrix-type, reptilian-inhibited world through this mega smart computer, which is derived from Saturn's ring, has everything to do with Satanism and Christianity and the Bible and good and evil and money and wealth and royal families and secret societies and the Illuminati. And that 1% are chosen ones, and they will call themselves chosen ones. I'm not saying they're chosen. They say that they're chosen. And then technically, to become part of the elite 1%, one does have to be invited by another member, so technically they are chosen. Now, we'll come back to that in a minute, but that ring around Saturn is this invisible force of sound waves, and at a low vibration is sent to the earth that we live in right now, currently right this second, and it's as if we right now, at this very second, like I'm supposed to say this. This is an augmented reality. Every one of us plays a part, right? You get up, you go to work, you want a sandwich for lunch, you make a sandwich. You add a little bit of mayonnaise or whatever you do to it. Then you get through the rest of the workday and you punch out your time card at wherever. And then you drive home and you sit in traffic for 30 minutes and then you arrive at home and then you're tired and you have dinner with the wife or the kids or whatever you do. And then you go to bed and then you get up and you do it again the next day. You get up, you get dressed, you take a shower, you eat breakfast. You've decided that you want a sandwich for lunch. You go get the sandwich, you go back to work from your 30-minute break, or you eat it at your desk, whatever your pattern is. And then you get through the end of the workday, you clock out, you sit in traffic all over again, and you drive back to the same house and the same place, okay? So where I'm going with this is the fact that we as a species, as a human species, are surrounded by reptilians and surrounded by Satanism and the Illuminati, who literally controls every single one of us. And above that, Saturn, and Saturn's ring surrounds the earth, the moon, and the sun, which we currently reside in right this second in life. So everything we say and everything we do, it's not really happening. It's a perception. It is an augmented perceptive reality. And everybody says perception is everything. So if I said to you, wow, you would look great with blonde hair, what do you think of right then? Like dyeing your hair blonde, right? It's perception, perception, perception. And our perception of reality is not a true perception in a true time, in a true space, because your eyes are wide shut if you think that. If you think it's a coincidence that we wake up every day, take a shower, go to work, eat that sandwich for lunch, clock out, come home, sit in traffic, put the kids to bed. If you think that's a coincidence that's happened all these hundreds of thousands of years or however long time has ever even existed, for real, then your eyes are wide shut. It's like you see it and you're hearing the information and you're probably going to go research this. And when you do, I encourage you to research David Icke, I-C-K-E, and learn as much as you can, because he's a much better speaker than I am. But and I'm touching a lot of bases in a 1 hour segment. And I realize I don't have a lot of time to cover every single thing I need to talk to you about. And that's why this is going to be a multi-series event. But I want you to know that the pyramid symbol and sign is a typical sign of somebody who has been cloned at one of these cloning facilities by the Illuminati. I want you to know that people can shapeshift, shapeshifters into a reptilian form. And aliens, as you know them today, are not actually little gray men. It's our perception. They're actually shapeshifters. And all of it is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is the ruling planet, the ruling god, as it's called, referred to, and worshipped as. And a lot of people will argue that Saturn and Satan are the same thing. It's the dark planet. It's the ruling planet of darkness. And it has come, it's always been the ruler. But now we have this quote unquote elite 1% group of the entire world. And now the inside of that, we have secret societies. We have the Skull and Bones Society, we have the Illuminati, and we have the Freemasons. And all three of them together form an even more elite society who choose who does what. And they are predestined. And it starts sometimes as children, such as a Disney star. They have their eye on a child and they see potential. So they let the child turn like 17 or 18, and then they, slyly convince them to sign a contract. What's your number? How much money would you like? And we're going to give you that, and you're going to sell your soul to the devil, and signed our contract, and now you're a slave to them. And that's the end of the story. When you don't cooperate, that's it. They're going to kill you and clone you and make many, 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 many versions of you, and you'll forever be around. But that's, a side of what I'm getting at right this second. Also, there's another point that's important to say right now. When a pop star or somebody turns around 27 or 28, they reach a breaking point, and every single one of them has a breakdown. And what that breakdown is our own human. We want to rebel. We know we're being controlled. We can't help that we're being controlled. We have been being controlled by fear and others and satanic rituals and bloodshed and all these things our entire life, or most of. And so that's sort of what we perceive as to be normal, or it is the price that we pay for selling our soul to the devil, right? And one day the devil's going to come collect. And so there is a general consensus around 27, 28 years old. A very famous person who has been chosen by the Illuminati, or one of these secret societies, which all inevitably lead to the Illuminati, whose ruling advisor is Saturn, and half of which are shape-shifting reptilians. So 27, 28 years old, you got Britney Spears, you got Katy Perry, you've got Lady Gaga, you've got Nicki Minaj, you've got Beyonce, you've got Jay-Z, you've got Eminem, and you've got every single one of them somewhere on film, on YouTube, on the internet, having a moment, a breakdown. And then they go off to rehab, or they get in a car accident, or they miraculously just die out of nowhere at such a young age. Heath Ledger, dare I say. Elvis Presley, all of them. And it's all part of this Illuminati. It's all part of having that kind of power, because we need these people in our lives. We need entertainment as a whole, as a species. Those of us that are not in the Illuminati or part of it, or Satanist, or whatever your religion is or isn't, there is only two sides. The part of this very small 1% part of the world that's in this group, in this secret society, and is ruling literally every other single person on this earth, and controlling what we consume and what we ingest and what we see on TV, and turning our favorite rock stars into icons and then cloning them before they can rebel against us and do anything about it, or instill fear in them so much so that they continue to behave a certain way. And then around 27, 28, they have a breakdown, they clone them, they die, and now this new version of them comes out, and they're this totally different character, sort of like Taylor Swift did. She did this song called Out of the Woods, and then her next song after that, which is I believe her newest song, there's this, you just watch the video. She is coming out of a grave, and inside of her grave, she's wearing this iconic blue dress that she wore in a couple of other videos. This sweet, innocent Taylor. She puts her in the grave and she buries her and puts dirt over her and emerges from this grave, this monstrous, kitten, slave to the industry, Taylor Swift. And all of a sudden, they don't write their own music. There is one major player, I'm sure there are many, but one major player, his name is Donald, I'll get back to his name in a minute. Anyway, he's a slave music writer for these famous pop stars and icons and the most super famous platinum selling, actors, actresses, and musicians and artists. And what they do is they teach them these certain songs and they dress them a certain way, and they are puppet masters. And every one of these people who signs their soul away or is chosen by the Illuminati or MK Ultra mind control, they are the puppets. So the puppet masters are pulling the strings and telling them what to do and when to do it and when not to do it and how they're going to dress. And, the crazy part is that they kind of know this up front if they're old enough to know good from evil, right from wrong, black from white. If they're old enough to know that, hey, if I sell my soul to the devil and I want money and power and to be this rich and famous rock star, part of them knows it's going to be a really shady deal. And there probably, is a lot of things that they're going to forget to ask for when they go to sign that contract in blood or in paper or however they go about signing that contract, right? What they don't know is that it's so much bigger than that, and there's this whole hidden agenda, and that the world is full of reptilians, and their bodies are going to be used as a shell in which demons are going to possess it. I'm not going to tell you how because that's not appropriate for this show. But let's just say demons are forced into their actual bodies, and then they have to commit crimes to prove themselves worthy of being accepted into this secret society. And at some point, every single one of them is cloned. Every single one of them dies. And then there are 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or however many infinite number of clones of them are cloned, are the new them. And that's why when they emerge out of the darkness or out of the woods, as Taylor put it, and come back as this totally different person than they were 6 months ago after having a meltdown or whatever, it's because they have been sent back to the cloning center and reprogrammed, and now a new cloned version of them is available for your entertainment. So every one of your favorite songs, play it backwards. You'll be surprised what you find. Jay-Z has a song out right now. His new album is called 444. Now, if you flip those 4s upside down, you get 666. Now, if you play his song, he has 13 songs on that record. Only 10 have been released, and that was as of 2017, so I'm sure all 13 have been released at this point, right? And if you play the song, hold on, I'm going to find it for you right here. What's the name of the song? It's like my many-faced God. Many-faced God, all one word, some uppercase, some lowercase. Anyway, Google many-faced God and see what that means. And anyway, one of his songs on this record is many-faced God is known as the god of death, worshipped by a mysterious crew of assassins known as Faceless Men. By the way, Assassin's Creed. It's going to teach you a little bit about that. Faceless Men who are headquartered in Free City of Bravos, and they believe that through their assassinations, they do his work. Game of Thrones will introduce that to you. Many-faced God. Game of Thrones, Assassin's Creed, The Matrix, all of these things have everything in common. However, if you play this one song by Jay-Z backwards, it literally says 666 murder, murder, God. I've heard it for myself. Trying to think of the name of the song for you. Hopefully I can find it before we run out of time. But it is one of the... It may be the one that says many-faced God. It may be number 13. That would make the most logical sense. So 13th song on his 13th album, labeled 444. You flip the fours upside down. You have 666. You play the 13th song backwards, and it says... many-faced God. It says 666 murder, murder, Jesus. Or yeah, it says that. All right. So I'm sorry I kind of went off on a tangent about pop stars and icons today, but this is a huge piece of this because this is going to be a multi-series project because there's so much to tell you and so much to say. And this is nothing but an introduction. Introduction Illuminati 101. At the ground level, there's a little bit, but it's a lot of knowledge to take in all at once. And I will break every single piece inside of this apart for you and do a different show on every single piece of knowledge that I have on the subject, which is extensively overloaded my brain. And it's dark. Some of it's dark, especially the Satanism and things like that. But know that these MK Ultra people are victims. This is a government-run program by the CIA, began in the 1950s. They started destroying records of it in the 70s, and now they're using it and testing it against their will on people who A, sell their soul to the devil to become rich and famous pop stars or musicians or actors or whatever, and B, young children who are exposed to it, and then demons are implanted into them, and then they are conjured out of them. And you'll hear, and if you do a little research, now that I've brought this to your attention, if you Google a certain famous person's breakdowns or even Beyonce's halftime show, you can literally watch her transform right in front of your eyes. Her eyes are going to turn black like marbles. Her whole face shifts and changes. And just do a little research on that. Until next time. Sorry I had to squeeze so much in there. A couple last little notes and symbols. Monarchs and butterflies have everything to do with the Illuminati. So does the dollar bill. So do Freemasons. They are all in one and all. Freemasons and the Illuminati are together. Supposedly so is the Queen of England, and it all comes down to this one bank somewhere in England, and once you make a certain amount of money, then they approach you and invite you to be a part of their secret society. So know that all your favorite singers and videos, just don't watch them. Don't play video games. I can't tell you what to do, but if it were me and I were you and I heard this, I would never play a video game. I would never watch the news because it's all being fed to you in a certain way to produce a certain outcome, a certain set of behaviors that make you repetitively do the same thing over and over again every single day, making you a what? A slave, a voluntary slave to the MK Ultra. Now, the only thing they can't control, from what I understand, is enough of us coming together and saying, oh, no, you're not taking my soul. But, it is what it is. That's as much as I can say about it tonight. We are out of time. That happened very quickly. I thank you all for tuning in, and I will talk to you again very soon. Please follow and like the page Decoding the Unknown on Facebook, and follow me on iHeartRadio, Tiffany H. Lewis, and I'll keep you guys posted on when the next show is going to be. It will be very informative, just like this one, and we will continue this session next time. Thank you guys and have a wonderful night.